Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'a sunnatahu ila yawmiddin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of the Benefits and Lessons Learned from Adab and Mufrad. We come now to chapter 252. The person who takes revenge for injustice. Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, said, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, go ahead and take revenge. Aisha said, the wives of the Prophet ﷺ sent Fatima to the Prophet ﷺ, and she asked for permission to enter while the Prophet was with Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, in her cloak. He gave her permission and she entered. She said, your wives have sent me to ask you for justice regarding the daughter of Abu Quhafa, i.e. Aisha. He said, daughter, do you love what I love? She said, yes. He said, then love her, Aisha. She got up and left and told the wives, who said, you have not helped us at all. Go back to him. She said, by Allah, I will never speak to him about her again. Aisha said, so they sent Zainab, the wife of the Prophet, and she asked for permission to enter, and he gave her permission. She said the same thing to him, and then Zainab began to disparage and revile me. So I looked to see whether the Prophet ﷺ would give me permission. I waited until I saw the Prophet ﷺ was not averse to me taking revenge. I attacked Zainab, and I did not hesitate to inflict a severe defeat on her. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ smiled and said, she is indeed the daughter of Abu Bakr. So the commentary here shows us the companions of the Prophet ﷺ knew that the Prophet ﷺ loved Aisha very much. So people used to send gifts when he was in Aisha's house more than when he was in anyone else's house. The wives of the Prophet ﷺ asked him to suggest to the companions that they should send gifts to everyone and not particularly to Aisha's house. The request was rejected because it was not for the Prophet ﷺ to suggest to the people to whom they should give gifts. For the people themselves should decide this. This hadith shows that calmness and fairness with which the Prophet ﷺ handled domestic disagreements. Mutual help in scarcity and famine. Abu Hurairah said there will be a famine at the end of time, and whoever encounters it should not ignore those who are hungry, and this has a weak chain. Abu Hurairah said, the Ansar said to the Prophet ﷺ, divide the palm trees between us and our brothers, i.e. the Muhajirun. He said, no. Then they said to the Muhajirun, spare us the trouble of their upkeep, and we will let you share in the fruit. They said, we hear and obey. So this demonstrates the love and open-handedness of the Ansar towards their brothers, the Muhajirun, as they all cooperate upon piety and goodness. So the Muhajirun would water the palm trees and clear the gardens, and they all shared in the harvest. Abdullah ibn Umar said that Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, spoke in the year of drought, which was a severe, disastrous year, after he had done his best to help the Bedouins with camels, wheat and oil from the adjoining villages and fields, until all the fields were exhausted as a result. He stood up to make supplication and said, O Allah, provide them at the tops of the mountains. Allah answered that prayer for him and for the Muslims when abundant rain fell. Umar said, praise be to Allah, by Allah, if Allah has not given us relief, I would not have left the people of any Muslim's house in a state of plenty without putting a like number of poor people with them. 2 people would not die with the food which could support 1 person. Salama ibn al-Aqwa said, the Prophet ﷺ said, as for your sacrifices, none of you should have any of it left in their house after a period of 3 days. When the following year came, they asked, Messenger of Allah, should we do the same as we did last year? He said, eat and store up and save. That was a year in which people were in difficulty, and I wanted you to help. So this hadith highlights the following amongst others. 1. The concerned leaders should have for the welfare of their subordinates. The Prophet ﷺ left the companions, may Allah be pleased with them all, upon this virtue as demonstrated in the preceding narration. 2. We should not store food when those around us suffer severe difficulties of hunger. 3. Verdicts would change as the reasons for them change. Chapter 254, Experience. Urwa ibn Zubayr said, I was sitting with Muawiyah, who was speaking to himself, and then became alert. He said, forbearance is nothing but experience, and he repeated it 3 times. So the statement of Muawiyah shows us that it came after he pondered thoroughly about this great issue. The character of being patient, able to control one's emotions, and willing to forgive someone who has upset one will only be achieved when one benefits from his past rights and builds upon them, or considers his errors and avoids repeating them. The narration shows the virtue of experience and that mere notions are not sufficient for life. And Abu Sa'id said, no one is forbearing unless he has made an error, and no one is wise unless he's had the experience. And this particular one is a weak chain. But this shows us that no one is forbearing unless he has made an error. That is, he has done something wrong of which he is ashamed and wants to shield anyone who has done the same. Chapter 254. The person who feeds one of his brothers in Allah, one of his Muslim brothers. Ali said, I prefer having a group of my brothers who join together as a sa' or two of food than going out to the market and setting a slave free. This is a weak chain. But the meaning behind it is that one and the reward of a person who feeds his brother is backed up in other hadiths. Chapter 256, the alliance in the time of ignorance. Abdul Rahman ibn Auf said, the Prophet ﷺ said, I was present with my uncles at the alliance of al-Mutayyibin. I would not wish to break it even for red camels, which is a symbol of worldly wealth. So we see from this hadith that Imam Ibn al-Athir rahimahullah explained, Banu Hashim, Banu Zuhra and Banu Taym gathered in the house of Ibn Jud'an during the days of ignorance. They bought perfume in a bowl into which they dipped their hands and made a vow to help one another and claim the rights of the oppressed from the aggressor. So it was called the Alliance of Mutayyibin, the perfumers. Unfortunately, many of the people wrongly considered this report as from the narrations of the companion Ibn Auf, rather than a report from him, for the Prophet ﷺ. The hadith encourages supporting the oppressed against the aggressor and making alliances that facilitate maintaining the ties of kinship, of course, within the limits of Sharia. So just to recap, we can see that it's mentioned the importance of helping the Muslim brother and sister, of course, when you can. Help them if they're needing of something. Help them in feeding them. And that one shouldn't store his food up in great quantities, filling up his fridge and his cupboards with all this food if he knows that there are people close by who need this food. He should give it to them in charity, as we saw from the hadiths. And it shows as well that help is not only in financial, rather in moral support, and to help your Muslim when he is being oppressed by someone, to help them in a way that you can. So these are all important aspects of how we should help each other as believers, as Muslim brothers and sisters. Until next time, inshallah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.